Welcome to our teaching on Parashat Ki Tavo. The Torah portion, of course, is Devarim, Deuteronomy 26, 1 to 29, 8. But today's reading will be Devarim 26, 1 to 19. And let us begin with the reading. And it's called the first fruits and tithes. And it shall be, when you come into the land which Yahweh, your Elohim, is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take some of the fruit of all the fruits of the soil which you bring from your land that Yahweh, your Elohim, is giving you, and shall put it in a basket, and go to the place where Yahweh, your Elohim, chooses to make his name dwell there. And you shall come to the one who is priest in those days, and say to him, I shall declare today to Yahweh your Elohim that I have come to the land which Yahweh swore to our fathers to give us. And the priest shall take the basket from your hand and place it before the altar of Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall answer and say before Yahweh your Elohim, my father was a perishing Aramean, and he went down to Mitzrayim, or Egypt, and sojourned there with a few men. And there he became a nation, great, mighty, and numerous. And the Mitzrites, the Egyptians, did evil to us, and afflicted us, and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried out to Yahweh, Elohim of our fathers, and Yahweh heard our voice, and saw our affliction, and our toil, and our oppression. And Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand, and with an outstretched arm, with great fear, and with signs and wonders. And he brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now see, I have brought the first fruits of the land, which you, O Yahweh, have given me. Then you shall place it before Yahweh, your Elohim, and bow down before Yahweh, your Elohim, and shall rejoice in all the good which Yahweh, your Elohim, has given to you and your house, you and the Levite, and the stranger who is among you, when you have completed tithing, all the tithe of your increase, in the third year, which is the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the fatherless, and to the widow, and they have eaten within your gates, and have been satisfied. Then you shall say before Yahweh your Elohim, I've put away the set-apart portion from my house, and also I have given it to the Levite, to the stranger, and to the fatherless, and to the widow, according to all your command which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commands, nor have I forgotten. I have not eaten any of it when in mourning, nor have I removed any of it from any unclean use, nor given any of it for the dead. I have obeyed the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. I have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look from your set-apart dwelling place from the heavens, and bless your people, Israel, and the land which you have given us, as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. Today, Yahweh, your Elohim, is commanding you to do these laws and right rulings, and you shall guard and do them with all your heart and with all your being. You have today caused Yahweh to proclaim to be your Elohim, and to walk in his ways, and guard his laws, and his commands, and his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And Yahweh has caused you to proclaim today to be his people, a treasured possession, as he has spoken to you, and to guard all his commands, so as to set you high above all nations which he has made, for a praise and for a name, and for esteem, and for you to be a set-apart people to Yahweh your Elohim, as he has spoken. And now let us return to our teaching as we complete that reading. And let's begin with an introduction. In this Torah reading, Yisrael received from Moshe a continuing instruction that begins with further teaching regarding the transition from the wilderness experience to what should be done upon entering the promised land, which Yahweh had formerly given to Abraham. It therefore is the fulfillment of all promises that were formerly given, so his instructions concerning whether they would prosper or whether they would not when they entered the land were extremely vital regarding their long-awaited hope. Could also our instructions found in the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament, be also paramount to us entering our promised land that we inherit through Yeshua too? And now let us look at the summary of the events in our reading. And we begin with the first point, which is the mitzvah, commandment of the first fruits, which is called Bikurim in Hebrew, are introduced. And secondly, we see there's a system of tithes, which is detailed. And thirdly, Moshe then reminds Israel that Yahweh has chosen them and they him as their Elohim. And fourthly, we see Israel is then to take stones, whitewash them, and write the Torah on them and place them on Mount Ebal, which of course was the Mount of Curses. And then half of the tribes shall proclaim the blessings on Mount Gerizim, and half the tribes proclaim the curses on Mount Ebal in a loud voice. Finally, Moshe reminds Yisrael of all the miracles they had experienced from Yahweh when he brought them out of Mitzrayim or Egypt. So let us now look at the significance of the first fruits, the Bikurim. Yisrael up to this point had spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness with no apparent hope until an entire generation had died. So this moment becomes an epic transformation. I hope we can see a similarity here with many of us who may have been wandering in the wilderness of our own. And now, by the mercy of Yahweh, we have come to see on the horizon the truth of Yeshua or Yahusha and the promise of that eternal promised land. Israel at this time must feel perplexed, not knowing what to expect when they would cross the Jordan, and so Moshe begins by several vital instructions. Therefore, the first instruction he gives is that they must bring the first ripened fruits, the Bikurim, of the land, like figs, grapes, barley, olives, pomegranates, wheat, and dates, to the Mishkan, the tabernacle, or later, of course, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, that would be built in Jerusalem, upon entering the promised land. And of course, that didn't happen until the days of Shlomo or Solomon. And also, Yisrael were about to cross over the Jordan with the covered ark leading the way. Now, this image gives us a more truer look at the ark, how it was covered. We see many pictures of the ark uncovered. But if we remember back in the days, or I think it might have been even Korah or the time of the Levites like that, they made a complaint because they never saw the holy objects or the ark because they were all covered. And it was only the priests themselves, the Kohanim, who saw that. And that's so therefore this image is more accurate. And next we come across a term. This term, to cross over, is significant because in Hebrew it is ivri or ivar, avar. Ivrit means Hebrew and avar means is the root word, the verb to cross, to transverse, to go over, to cross over, and that's where we get the word ivrit from, or Hebrew. So we see how it connects, and now we come to another word or another phrase which from Shaul found in Colossians 1:13, where he says, "He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us, or caused us to cross over, into the kingdom of the Son of his love." What then does it truly mean to be Ivri, a Hebrew? To cross over, for Shaul, Paul also says this in Romeim, which is Romans 2:29. But he is a Yehudi, a Jew, who is one inwardly, and circumcision is that which is of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the letter, and his praise is not from men, but from Elohim. What then is the great significance of the first fruits? After living in a wilderness for so long, in a place where nothing could be grown, now they were entering a land flowing with milk and honey. So surely it was a time to firstly remember Yahweh, who was giving them this glorious land. Surely this thought of bringing the first fruits of our labor should always be something that many of us should do but have neglected. And I believe it should be resurrected as a worship statement to Yahweh in our life for the great work he is doing and has done in us. And this is why the Feast of First Fruits is so relevant. When then is Bikurim, the Feast of First Fruits? To understand the Feast of First Fruits, we need first go back to where it is commanded. In Vayikra, which is Leviticus 23:10, where it says, "Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Shabbat, the priest waves it." As this verse clearly describes the Feast of First Fruits as the wave of the omer, the sheaf of grain such as barley, on the day after the Shabbat, why does old Judaism celebrate this feast on the 16th of the month of Aviv, Nisan? This has come about because quite possibly on the particular year of the death of Rashbi, whose name is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, between 80 and 160 AD, the author of the Zohar, a most famous book of Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism, the feast was on the 16th. Out of a sort of saint respect, their observance has emanated. As he is considered by Jews as a saint in Judaism, rather than obeying Torah, Jews hold to the 16th to honor him with the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, called Lag BaOmer, being the day of his death, in which they will gather at the town of his burial, which is probably his town of his birth as well. However, To reveal the true significance of the first fruits celebration, we need only look to our Master, because Yahweh, in his great redemptive plan, most perfectly waved his sheaf, being Yeshua, when he was raised from the dead, and was waved as the first fruits before Yahweh on the first day of the week, exactly according to the Torah given by Moshe. As Miriam met Yeshua at the tomb, we read this in Yehuchanan, which is John 20, verse 17. Yeshua said to her, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my Elohim and your Elohim." To further fully grasp the significance of the great fulfillment of the feast, we need to read what Shaul Paul says in Corinthia Aleph, which is 1 Corinthians 15:20. "But now Messiah has been raised from the dead and has become the first fruits of those having fallen asleep." I do wonder if the pressure from the first century Netzarim believers to appropriate Yeshua as Yahweh's first fruit wave sheaf may have caused the Pharisaic leaders of Judaism to eventually change the appointed feast to the 16th, and not according to the Torah. We know that in the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament, the start of the Feast of Unleavened Bread was called a high Sabbath, as in Yehuchanan, John 19:31, where we read, "Therefore, because it was the preparation day, that the body should not remain on the crossbeam on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high day." However, to fully understand the truth, we must investigate the original Hebrew in the Torah concerning the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is not called a Shabbat, as in Vayikra 23:7, where we read, "On the first day you shall have a holy convocation." In Hebrew, a Mikra Kodesh. It's not called a Shabbat. Why then must we consider this to be important? It is because all the appointed times point towards our Redeemer, Yeshua, who is our Passover, who is the unleavened bread being without sin, and who is our first fruit from the dead, giving us the hope of our resurrection at his coming again. Therefore, the celebration of the first fruits, Ha Bikurim, should be a great celebration not only of our resurrection, but also of what he is doing in our life today. May we continue to celebrate it with great joy, and may we contemplate an offering to him, because we too have entered the land of great promise, being his kingdom by faith, and will see the full manifest completeness of that promise on his return, when we will forever dwell with him as he rules forever in perfect righteousness. How wonderful will that day be? And now, what is a sign of living in the kingdom? In truth, the most visible sign of desiring to live under the government of Yahweh according to how he established living in the promised land comes to us through the most equitable means of tithing, which truly is an act of faith to his faithfulness. There were, in fact, 3 tithes that we read about, and so we have this chart. The first tithe, which is called Maaser Rishon, found also in Bamidbar 18:21, was known as the Levitical tithe that would support the priests and Levites, and it would remain in all the Levitical cities. The second tithe, known as Maaser Sheni, was only that of agricultural produce such as wheat, barley, grapes as in wine, figs, pomegranates, olive as in olive oil, and dates. This tithe was only to be used for the celebration of convocations in the sanctuary. Unlike the first tithe, along with the Levite, the other Israelites, their family members and servants all ate portions of this tithe. Also, this tithe was an integral part of rejoicing and celebration in the presence of Yahweh. It is distinctly different from the first tithe. And then we have the third tithe, which is called Maaser Ani. And it was a welfare tithe that was offered every third and sixth year. And this tithe remained in the city of origin for the poor. Yahweh commanded Israel to care for the needy. It was not an option. In addition to the Levite, it included all others who had no inheritance. Yahweh made it the responsibility of the religious leaders to take care of the needy. Once again, one requirement for receiving from the tithe was lack of land inheritance in Israel. We read this truth coming through the letter of Shaul, Paul, to the Galatians in Galut Yah, Galatians 2:10, where it says, Kepha, or Peter, and Yehuchanan, John, desired only that we should remember the poor, the very thing which I also was eager to do. So we can see that caring for the poor was most important. So now let's look scriptural tithes. Therefore, based on Scripture, we can say that the total tithe represented 14.3% of the increase according to the chart, which reveals that in the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, being the seventh year, no tithes were collected, and the land rested. We must also remember that the nation of Israel was under Yahweh, administered by the priests and Levites, as the form of government called the Sanhedrin. In giving the tithe to the poor and needy, the Israelite was demonstrating his commitment to keep all of the Torah, the law. Like the rest of the Torah, tithing was a complete package with three inseparable parts which cannot be divorced from the context of the entire Mosaic law. I will concede, however, that national government taxes are presumably associated with the secondary and third tithe. It was also only when Israel desired a king, as in 1 Shemuel or Samuel 8:14-17, that the burden of taxation by King Rehoboam finally led to the division of the kingdom between Yehudah or Judah and Israel. And we find that in Melachim Aleph 1 Kings 12. And now let us look at the chart of taxation in Yeshua's day. And this is how it would look like. First, we see a 10% empire tax, which was the spoil of wars tax to Rome. Then a 10% plus province tax, which was King Herod's tax. And there was a promise in 1 Samuel of that happening by the kings. And then we have a 10% religious tithe, which was food tithes, based on Numbers 18:20-26. Then there was a 10% festival tithe, which was a food tithe also, Deuteronomy 12:6-7, and 14:22-23. Then we have a welfare tithe of 3.33%, or 10% every third and sixth year. And we read that in Deuteronomy 14, 28 to 29, and also in 26, 12 and 13. Plus, we had road taxes, bridge taxes, temple shekel, free will offerings, and many other religious and royal taxes. And therefore, the total taxation was at least 40% bare minimum. So from the book of Tobit, one of the books of the Apocrypha, we also read this for clarification. And we see that in Tovia, which is the same as Tobit, right? Tovia or Tobit, chapter 1, 6 to 8, which I will read. At the festivals, I was the only one to make the frequent journey to Jerusalem prescribed for all Israel in an eternal commandment. I used to hurry off to Jerusalem with the first fruits of crops and herds, the tithes of the cattle, and the first shearings of the sheep, and I gave them to the priests of Aaron's line for the altar, and the tithe of wine, corn, olive oil, pomegranates, and other fruits to the Levites ministering in Jerusalem. The second tithe I converted into money, and I went and spent the proceeds each year in Jerusalem. Every third year, when I brought the tithe and gave it to those to whom it was my duty, as Deborah, my father's mother, had commanded me, for my father had died, leaving me an orphan. We see from this reading that though Tobit of the tribe of Naphtali had been carried off into the land of the Assyrians to Nineveh, he made every effort to fulfill the commands as given by Yahweh through Moshe in the Torah. We also must remember that Yeshua, however, gives a great rebuke to the leaders of the people in this. But when we go back to Tobit, we see just how committed he was to fulfill the words of Moshe. So now let's look at the rebuke that Yeshua gives to the people, or to the leaders, meaning the Pharisees, etc. in this reading. And we see that in Matthew 23:23, where he says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone." This reading speaks of tithing, and these Pharisees were so meticulous that they would even count, for example, the anise seeds, which were tiny, to determine the tithe. But they neglected matters such as justice, mercy, forgiveness, faith, the very underpinning principles of the Torah. They were satisfied with the externals, which made them look good, but willfully resisted the spiritual meaning of the Torah, the law. The real challenge comes when we do obey Torah, but fail in the weightier areas of justice, mercy, forgiveness, and faith, which manifests when pride rules. And that could be a major problem with those that are returning to more Torah observance among the Messianics. May we never lose sight of the weightier elements of the Torah while still considering the smaller matters, while still always remaining humble. It is therefore our burden as those in the kingdom to place great significance on providing for the needs of the kingdom and to the poor. If we indeed believe in the faithfulness of Yahweh and his perfect government over all, may we never forget those who work through many dangers to bring the truth of the word to the world. And we experience that every week when we read stories of the heroes and heroines of the faith For this truth to be truly become inspirational, I would encourage us all to read books like Jesus Freaks, Fox's Book of Martyrs, and The Witnesses. And that brings us to the end of the Torah portion, and let us now turn to the Haftarah and just see what today's reading may hold. And we see that it comes from Yeshayahu, Isaiah 60:1 to 22. So let's begin with that reading. And I've called it, the esteem has risen upon Zion. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the esteem of Yahweh has risen upon you. For look, darkness covered the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But Yahweh arises over you, and his esteem is seen upon you. And the Gentiles shall come to your light, and sovereigns to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes all around and see. All of them have gathered. They have come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are supported on the side. Then you shall see and be bright, and your heart shall throb and swell. For the wealth of the seas return to you. The riches of the Gentiles come to you. A stream of camels cover your land. The dromedaries, which are Arabian camels of Midian and Ephah, all those from Sheba come, bearing gold and incense and proclaiming the praise of Yahweh. All the flocks of Kedar are gathered to you. The rams of Nebaioth serve you. They come up for acceptance on my altar, and I embellish or enhance my esteemed house. Who are these who fly like a cloud and like doves to their windows? Because the coastlands wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, to the name of Yahweh your Elohim, and to the set apart one of Israel, because he has adorned you. And the sons of the foreigners shall build your walls, and their sovereigns serve you. For in my wrath I've smitten you, but in my delight I shall have compassion on you. And your gates shall be open continually, they are not shut day and night, to bring to you the wealth of the Gentiles, and their sovereigns in procession. For the nation and the reign that do not serve you shall perish, and those Gentiles shall be utterly laid waste. The esteem of Lebanon shall come to you, cypress, pine, and box tree together, to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I shall make the place of my feet magnificent. And the sons of those who afflicted you come, bowing to you, and all those who despise you shall bow themselves at the soles of your feet. And they shall call you City of Yahweh, Zion, of the set apart one of Israel, instead of you being forsaken and hated, so that no one passes through you. I shall make you an everlasting excellence, a joy of many generations, and you shall drink dry the milk of the Gentiles, and shall milk the breast of sovereigns. And you shall know that I, Yahweh, your Savior and your Redeemer, and the Elohim of Jacob. Instead of bronze, I bring gold, and instead of iron, I bring silver, and bronze instead of wood, and iron instead of stones. And I shall make your officers peace, and your magistrates righteousness. Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, neither wasting nor ruin within your borders. And you shall call your walls deliverance, and your gates praise. No longer is the sun your light by day, nor does the moon give light to you for brightness, but Yahweh shall be to you an everlasting light, and your Elohim your beauty, comeliness. No longer does your sun go down, nor your moon withdraw itself, for Yahweh shall be your everlasting light, and the days of your mourning shall be ended. And your people, all of them righteous, shall inherit the earth forever, a branch of my planting, a work of my hands, to be adorned. The little shall become 1,000, and the small one a strong nation. I, Yahweh, shall hasten it in its time. Amen. And now just return and let us just discuss for a moment that reading. This is the 6th Haftarah of consolation that reads up to Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, or what the Jews of today call Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, or mostly called the New Year in secular terms. In glowing terms, Yeshayahu Isaiah Hanavi, the prophet, recounts descriptions of what will unfold during the redemption when the Messiah rules, beginning with the resurrection of the dead and the ingathering of the exiles, continuing with the joy and abundance that the Israelite people will then experience, as well as the gifts that will be brought to Elohim from all nations of the world. This expresses the great esteem of Jerusalem during the millennial kingdom. It will be a great time of esteem for Yahweh, for the Messiah, for Jerusalem or Yerushalayim, the city of Elohim, and the land of Yisrael. The prophet also reveals the final state of the world, when Yahweh himself will be the light of the world, with no need of the sun for light, as described again in the final book of Scripture, speaking of the new Jerusalem coming down to earth in Chazon, which is Revelation 21:22, where we read, But I saw no temple in it. That's Jerusalem. For Yahweh Elohim Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city had no need of the sun or of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of Elohim illuminated it. The Lamb is its light, and the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory and honor into it. And that concludes the Haftarah. And now let us turn to the Netzarim Ketavim. As we see here, it's Ma'aseh HaShalichim, which is the Acts of the Apostles, 24:10 to 21. And let us first read it. And I headed it as Shaul delivered to Rome after the shipwreck. And when we came to Rome, the captain delivered the prisoners to the captain of the guard, but Shaul was allowed to stay by himself with the soldier guarding him. And it came to be after 3 days that Shaul called the leaders of the Yehudim, the Jews, together. And when they had come together, he said to them, Men, brothers, though I have done none at all against our people or the practices of our fathers, I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, who, when they had examined me, intended to let me go, because there was no cause for putting me to death. But the Yehudim, the Jews, spoke against it, and I was compelled to appeal to Caesar. Not that I had any accusation against my nation. This, therefore, is the reason I called for you, to see you and speak with you. It is because of the expectation of Israel that I am bound with these chains. And they said to him, We neither received letters from Yehuda concerning you, nor have any of the brothers who came reported or spoken whatever wicked about you. And we think it right to hear from you what you think. For indeed, concerning this sect, we know that it is spoken against everywhere. And having appointed him a day, many came to him where he was staying, to whom He was explaining, earnestly witnessing about the reign of Elohim and persuading them concerning Yeshua or Yahusha from both the Torah of Moshe and the prophets, from morning until evening, and some indeed were persuaded by what was said, but some believed not, and disagreeing with one another, they began to leave, after Shaul or Paul had spoken one word. The set-apart Spirit rightly spoke through Yeshayahu, Isaiah the prophet, to our fathers, saying, Go to this people and say, Hearing ye shall hear, but by no means understand, and seeing ye shall see, but by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become fat, and with their ears they heard heavily, and they have closed their eyes, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn back, and I should heal them. Therefore let it be known to you, that the deliverance of Elohim has been sent to the Gentiles, and they shall hear. And when he had said these words, the Yehudim, the Jews, went away and had a great dispute among themselves. And Shaul stayed 2 entire years in his own rented house, and was receiving all who came to him, proclaiming the reign of Elohim and teaching about the Master, Yahusha or Yeshua, Messiah, with all boldness unhindered. Now let us just return now to a bit of a commentary. Shaul or Paul, in his defense, makes it abundantly clear that he had been faithful to all things written in the Torah and the prophets, the Nevi'im, even bringing the offerings and alms to Jerusalem, and purified himself in the Beit HaMikdash, of course with a mikvah, the temple, that is, in the temple, according to the customs of Torah. This same defense is repeated to the leaders of the Yehudim, the Jews, in Acts 28:17-31, revealing Shaul's faithfulness to the Torah in all aspects, refuting the claims against him by the religious leaders of his day and even today. Like the poor that will always be with us, there will always be people who hear but never listen. And there will always be people who watch but never see. Don't be discouraged, not 1 inch, because one day the truth that you are currently proclaiming will be a shining reality. May we never lose sight of the great truth we have found, to the praise of our Master Yeshua and Yahweh, our loving, compassionate, and great Elohim. And as we come to the close of this teaching, may it be a blessing to you all. And I just want to wish you a Shavua Tov, which means a good 7 or a good week. And let us just say, Amen. Thank you for joining us.